What up, y'all? I wanted to make another video to encourage y'all with something I've been saying, which is this: their Jesus is not our Jesus. Today, the passage I want to look at comes out of Mark chapter 3. And in that chapter, Jesus enters the synagogue on a Sabbath day. And the synagogue is just a Jewish place of worship. And the Sabbath day is the one sacred day throughout the week where they get together to worship God and to care for one another. And it says, as he enters into the synagogue, there were people there looking for a reason to accuse him. And when we read the book of Luke chapter 6 tells us the people who were there to accuse him were the Pharisees and then these Jewish experts in the law known as the scribes. So Jesus, knowing what's happening, looks around the room, finds a man with a shriveled hand, tells the man to stand up, and asks everybody this question: is it lawful to do good or to do evil on the Sabbath? I want to pause and encourage y'all with 3 different things from this passage so that you won't grow weary in well-doing. And the first question is this: when it says that the Pharisees and the scribes are looking to accuse Jesus of something, and when it says that Jesus responds by saying, is it lawful? The question I want to ask y'all is this: is Jesus's breaking of the Sabbath illegal or a religious violation? Is it illegal or a religious crime? Because if you're like me and you grew up in America, you grew up with a strong separation of church and state. The church is something that we associate with religion, with worship, with theology. The state is something we associate with crime and murder and theft. And then we take that division between church and state and we impose it onto Jesus. And guess what we conclude? That Jesus was apolitical, that Jesus didn't confront political leaders of his day, that Jesus was doing this quote unquote religious thing. And that's totally wrong. One thing we fail to realize is that the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Jewish elite weren't just religious people, y'all. They were political leaders as well. It's almost as if your pastor was also your governor and your mayor. How do we know this? Because the Pharisees could get your property confiscated. The Pharisees could get you locked up in jail. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the other Jewish religious elite could get you excluded from various institutions in society. They had religious and legal power. So that challenges us to realize when Jesus asks if it's lawful, he's deliberately setting himself up to break not only the religious, but also the legal laws of his day. He sets up a confrontation deliberately to confront and expose their hypocrisy by addressing legal and political issues and religious issues in his day. The second thing is this, is when Jesus asked the question, is it lawful to do good or to harm? Nobody answered. And it says Jesus grew angry. I got a question to ask y'all. Does your Jesus grow angry at the hypocrisy and the wickedness of religious leaders who dismiss the law of God to justify mistreating oppressed people like men without hands? What about in our day? How do religious and political leaders justify disobeying God and not doing right by people who are being harmed? Does your Jesus get angry at that? My Jesus gets angry at the brutality imposed upon black and brown communities by police. My Jesus gets angry at the wickedness of men like Charlie Kirk. My Jesus got angry at slavery, at segregation. My Jesus would never stand by while folks are getting abducted. Does your Jesus get angry? Do you hear a Jesus, when you're preached to at your church, who tells folks to get angry at the hypocrisy of religious and political leaders of his day? And Jesus takes it a step further. Because when Jesus breaks their Sabbath, he deliberately breaks the laws of the land. Do you have a Jesus that tells you to critically engage the laws of the land? Or do you have a Jesus, or do you hear a Jesus preached every week that says simply obey what the law states? I'm going to tell you, man or woman of God, there comes a time in your life, there comes a time in the life of God's people when the laws of the land are so wicked and so violate the laws of God that to obey God requires us to disobey the laws of the land. And the way ICE is acting, we're at that moment. So don't just accept what ICE and law enforcement are doing with our undocumented brothers and sisters. My Jesus tells us to confront them and ask when and how it's appropriate to break the laws of our land. Does your Jesus do that? Do you have a Jesus that takes sides in that way? Finally, the story finishes with Jesus telling the man, stick your arm out. When Jesus has the man stick his arm out, Jesus heals the man's hand. The man sits down, everybody marvels, and it says the Pharisees and other Jewish groups got together to figure out how they could kill Jesus. My final point is this: do you have a Jesus that takes sides with the oppressed, even at the expense of his own life? Shoot, do you exist in a church that's willing to do that? Because imagine if you were that man, you would have known in your brain that Jesus everybody's about is a Jesus who so cared for me that he was willing to put his life on the line to heal me. Do we have Christians who are willing to do the same today? Don't listen to nobody saying Jesus don't take sides. He clearly takes sides. Go ask the man with the shriveled hand. Does he clearly take sides in your congregation? Do the Jesus you hear about week in, week out clearly take sides against men like Charlie Kirk, against the administration of Donald Trump? If you don't got a Jesus who takes sides, saints, go to a church who preaches a Jesus who does. Because my Jesus ain't they Jesus. So in conclusion, I want to put 3 things before you that I mentioned. Number 1, Jesus was involved in the political and the religious issues of his day. And so should we. Secondly, Jesus got angry at the hypocrisy of religious leaders, and so should we. Thirdly, Jesus took sides in opposition to religious leaders, and so should we. Don't grow weary in well-doing, saints. Their Jesus ain't our Jesus. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.